Now it's so easy to me to treat you like the only one that I need. So if you go running off looking for someone new, ain't no one else in the whole wide world gonna treat you like I do. So let's pack my suitcase with all your little things. Me and my baby bird are gonna sing and say, ooh, angels from above, deliver me from this wicked world, 'cause Lord, well, I fell in love.
Well, welcome to Noel's World of Whiskey, and we're going to wander over to bourbon. Head down the States to, Louisville, Kentucky. And this is a new player on the block. It's not one of the big guys, the very few big guys that pretty much are branding everything these days. This was founded by Kaveh Zamanian, and he was an Iranian-born PhD psychologist. And he grew up in Southern California before he ended up in Chicago. There he met his wife, Heather, who was a Louisville native. And she had a passion for bourbon and had quite a big influence on him because he was a Scotch drinker, and sort of got him to swing over toward bourbon and learn what bourbon was all about. He did a lot of research. He studied the drink, and at some point, I guess he got this inspiration that we could make this stuff better. And part of it was he felt that there wasn't a lot of transparency in the industry, in the bourbon industry. And there was a handful of distillers that were turning out dozens of brands, and there wasn't really any clear differentiation of these brands. You know, the labeling on any of these brands could have been, from one of the handful of big distillers that were basically putting out all this whiskey. And he wanted to do things different, so he thought he could bring something different to the world of bourbon, and he got this idea that he's gonna get into the distilling business. And of course, the name Rabbit Hole actually came from his wife, Heather, and she told him that once he got into this business, that he was taking them down a rabbit hole from which they couldn't return. And of course, that's pretty much what's been going on. He's gone down that rabbit hole. Now, he's actually done quite well. This has really grown, this brand. And he partnered up in 2019 with Pernod Ricard, one of the distillery giants there. But he didn't really sell out to him. He created a partnership so that he would be able to increase his production, networking, and distribution, and of course, in the States, Canada, and internationally. And of course, with Pernod Ricard, that made it possible. And it helped them to increase their whiskey portfolio in bourbon and in the States and that. So we're going to do a review of this particular bourbon. So the mash bill on this whiskey it's a little bit different. It is typical of the corn whiskeys. It's 68% corn, and it is 18% wheat instead of rye, and 14% malted barley. And Kaveh Zamanian is, because probably his Scotch influence, he likes the idea of adding malted barley to these whiskeys. So Anyways, we're going to get into it. We're going to do the review of it. Now, this is quite unique in that it's finished in Pedro Ximenez cask, which you don't ever hear bourbon being finished in. So when he said he was going to do things different, he's definitely doing things different. So again, the Scotch influence that he's had is obviously something that he is passing on to his concepts or his ideas, a direction that bourbon can go. I don't think he's saying that all bourbon is going to go this direction. I think he's just trying to open the door to some new ideas, maybe change the culture a bit and the way American culture thinks of bourbon, because the big boys are limiting by going with so many traditional mash bills that it is difficult for anybody to break new ground, and I think that's what he's trying to do, is break new ground, and so far he's been very successful. So because well, we'll give it a review and we'll see how it goes. The nose. So it's a little different than a lot of the bourbons that I've nosed. We're getting cherries. And that's the sherry influence. Marmalade, dried fruit, raspberries, definitely blackberries. Very citrusy. And I'm getting a little bit of sweetness here. Getting a little bit of vanilla there. But very fruity. It's quite a burst of fruit and definitely the ripe and bright fruits. So, okay. Cheers, the palate. Quite delicious. Not like your average bourbon, that's for sure. The sherry's really coming through here. I am getting a little bit of a hug, a little bit of that Kentucky hug. There's a burst of fruit. And again, cherry. The marmalade, the dried fruits. A little bit of the oak coming through. Caramel. Sweet caramel, maybe a little bit of what I get with some of my scotches, a little bit of the toffee. But very kind of something I was going to mention about the nose there, because I'm getting it right now as I get close here. I'm getting some nose here. I'm getting some floral stuff going on here. Yeah, definitely some floral stuff going on there. But I'm going to mention that this is bottled at 46.5%. I think it's 93 proof. It is, it's finished in, as I said, Pedro Ximenez sherry casks. And I told you the mash there, a little different. The wheat mellows it out a bit. You don't have that real spiciness you get from the rye in that. We'll top it up there. It is a very nice bourbon though. Different. It's almost smooth like a Woodward Reserve, but certainly a lot more fruity. It doesn't have it definitely nothing like a Blanton's or Wild Turkey or any of those. I think the lack of rye really changes the flavor of this bourbon. It just doesn't have that spiciness, or it's very light spices. But nice coating on the tongue. Okay, to the finish. little bit of that tobacco in the background there. And a little of the wood, a little, you know, I thought for a second I was going to leave the malt, but no. And I don't think there's enough malt in here to really, maybe if I drank more bourbon and I didn't drink as much Scotch, I'd probably notice maybe. But it's a very balanced drink, that's for sure. But the emphasis here is definitely the finishing in the sherry casks, because you're getting a lot of fruit. And again, the floral notes, very perfumey. I'm going to say it's a medium finish, medium, short, medium, and it's got a, like I say, it gives you a little bit of that coating of on the tongue, in the back of the tongue there. Certainly, you do get a bit of a hug from it, you know, at that 46.5 ABV. I'm going to add a little water to this to see what water does to it. So, you know, I would say that Kaveh Zamanian is a different kind of distiller. He's doing something different. Now, my understanding, he's really into his carbon footprint. He uses all local grains. He supports the local community in terms of when he was building his distillery. His copper column still there was it was a local. I forget the name of the company, but it's local in Louisville. There, only a few blocks from where they built the distillery. But you know, the labor, the artisans that, you know, are all local people. He's very, I think, transparent about his how he distills his bourbons, and he's also you know, opened up his distillery to tours. I think it's helped out a lot. It's certainly helped in terms of publicity, because he gets a lot of publicity. You know, Forbes has written articles, Whiskey Magazine. There's been a lot of articles on him. And he's quite a personality, very outgoing personality. Him and his wife, Heather, I think they, as a team, they do a lot of presentations together. Very interesting man, no question about it. The idea that there's no real master distiller, master blender, as he says, they all participate. His team, his group, they all participate in the tastings and understanding what you know, which whiskeys to pull from the cask. They do small batches, you know, 15 barrels at a time, so which is different. It's certainly more in the craft style distillery, but with Pernod Ricard behind you, I think you do make a bit of a statement. Certainly they have a lot of clout. So, okay, you notice I'm using my Trudeau glass here, so just thought I would really, you know, get the nose out of this and see what the water does. Oh yeah, it's sweetened it up. Yeah, very sweet. We're getting not just caramel, it's toffee. Fudge. So a little bit of fruit fudge. No more floral notes. More the a little bit of oak. But lots of fudge, lots of toffee, raisins, the dark dried fruits, Maybe a little bit of the marmalade still. Okay. The palate. Wow. Nice. So we're getting, again, the nose in the palate. Caramel and toffee. But I am getting some fruit now. So the marmalade's kind of turned into oranges and raspberries. And that's the sherry, the cherries from the sherry there. And I would say also, oh boy, maybe some grape. Interesting, because I'm almost relating to this like a Scotch all of a sudden. My brain's gone from bourbon to Scotch, that's probably going to upset a lot of Americans to say something like that. But I think it's the Pedro Ximenez casks, you know, that influence. But I am getting that Kentucky hug. I'm definitely getting that. So there you are. I'm getting the Kentucky hug. But saying it like it is, you know. It's interesting. Like these barrels. I believe this because this has been double barreled, you know, and my understanding was they were toasted and then they were in number 4 alligator char, which really pulls a lot of the. It's going to pull a lot of the barrel out of it, and that's the sweetness of the barrel, the lignum, and that, as Dr. Don Livermore would say. But you know, I did some Canadian whiskeys before this, and of course I did show some of the bourbons there when I was doing the Canadian whiskeys, because we have in Canada some similarities. I mean, we have quite a few whiskeys that are corn based, and we do whiskeys different because we do the grains, you know, separately, and then we mix the barrels. But in the States, of course, they mix the grains into a mash. But there is some similarities between Canadian whiskey and maybe more similarities between Canadian whiskey and American whiskey, until you get into the single malts and that, which I mean, everybody's doing them. I mean, they're doing them in the States, they're doing them in Canada, all over Canada, and it's really increased in the States and that. So bourbons, we don't want to lose traditional bourbon, and I like what this guy's doing, but I'm going to say that still we got to hang on to some of the traditional stuff. I mean, I like my Woodford Reserve, and I've tried a few other, like Long Branch and Bob Dylan's whiskey there, his Heaven's Door and all that. But there's some traditional ones I like. I really like the Nob Hill whiskeys, and Mitchers and that. They've got some good whiskeys, got some good bourbons, and I guess maybe it does get overdone because, a lot of the branding is from, those same distilleries, and those same mash bills. So I get where he comes from. I understand what he's doing, and he is producing, I would say, a pretty good whiskey here. This idea of finishing in Pedro Ximenez Casks, I mean, I guess, where are they going to go next? It'll be interesting to see. What will we give this? This is an exceptional whiskey. It's very confusing when you've been drinking bourbons that are, I've drank wheat bourbons. I mean, that's what Woodford Reserve is. So, but I've also, I drank the Nob Hill rye whiskeys that are incredible, and some of the Nob Hill, 12-year-old, which has got it's got the influence of rye and corn, and a wee bit of barley in that. They're all good. They all have their place, but this is unique. This is a unique whiskey, and in all fairness, this is a player. Now, as far as aging, my understanding, this is aged 5 years in bourbon cask, and then I think it's finished off another year in the Pedro Ximenez, and I believe the Dillon whiskey there is the Heaven's Door is 7 or 8 years, yeah, and some of the Nob Hills are 12 years. But this is okay at that age, 6 years. They're doing. If you could produce a whiskey like this in 6 years maturation, why not? You know, you're going to make more money. So he's done okay. You know, compared to some of the Canadian whiskeys I've tried that have been aged, well, less than 6 years. I would say that this would actually be a really good one to put up against a whiskey in Victoria, McAloney's whiskeys, because he's got some whiskeys there. Now you can't call them whiskey in Canada. Some of those whiskeys are aged less than 3 years, but he had Dr. Swan playing with those whiskeys and helping them, and I think he was just trying to make a profit with fewer years of aging. But those whiskeys are pretty amazing for, you know, being under 3 years. I'm not crazy about whiskeys under 3 years. I'm just saying they're amazing what he was able to do in 3 years. But if I match him up to a 6-year-old whiskey like this, they're going to struggle trying to compete with something like this. So I'm going to give this guy a decent mark. I'm going to say this rabbit hole here is an 80. It's in the range of a lot 40. You know, it's a good whiskey. I do like this stuff. I do like it with water too. It's a great whiskey with water. So I'm going to give it an 80. I'm going to say that it's definitely a whiskey that it's definitely a bourbon that I was happy when I purchased it. I didn't know what I was getting into. I'd read about it, but I'm pretty happy I got it. I like drinking it. I've turned a few people onto it that really like this whiskey. So that's my score, 80. So that's our bourbon review, Rabbit Hole Dareringer. And I'm gonna ask you to drink wisely and drink intelligently and do not drink and drive. And until the next time, cheers.